Time for Quackcast 62, plus or minus 2. This one is called The World Has Moved On, and is from the science-based medicine blog of the same name. I do a lot of driving as part of my job. I am the sole, S-O-U-L if you ask me, infectious disease doctor at 3 hospitals, and I can spend a lot of time, an hour or 2 a day in the car, depending on traffic. What prevents me from going crazy sitting in traffic is listening to podcasts and audible books. I especially like reading, and yes, audible books are reading pedant, multi-volume epics. Currently, I am reading Stephen King's Dark Tower series, which occurs in a universe where the world has moved on. In Midworld, there was once a world with science and beauty and art, but something changed. What, I do not yet know, and I have no interest in knowing, thank you very much. No spoilers, please. Anyway, it's a world where there are some artifacts of science and technology, but it appears to be an increasingly primitive world. Being fantasy, there is, unlike the world I live in, magic as well. I like that phrase, the world has moved on. I have an understanding of the world and medicine, based mostly, but not entirely on science. My understanding of the natural world is not complete, but mostly consistent and validated by hundreds of years of research. My undergraduate degree, those many years ago, last century, was in physics, and like all pre-meds and medical school students, I have had an extensive education in chemistry, biology, biochemistry, physiology, anatomy, etc. It all ties together nicely, especially in my specialty, where I have the most knowledge. I consider infections at many levels, from the issues of a single molecule change that may confer antibiotic resistance, up through the patient and their family, and sometimes at the level of the entire planet. Yeah, I'm a holistic doctor, not that pseudo-holism of scams. The sciences gives a mostly coherent understanding of the world. Mostly coherent. It does give an understanding of what is possible, what is probable, what is improbable, and what is impossible. Most of the sciences, unlike parts of medical science, do not concern themselves with the impossible. There's no complementary and alternative physics department, or chemistry department, or biochemistry department, or engineering department. These disciplines compare their ideas against reality, and if the ideas are found wanting, they are abandoned. Perpetual motion is not considered seriously by any academic physicist. However, if perpetual motion were an alternative medicine, it would be offered at Harvard in a center by a professor of medicine. Most scientists outside of medicine are aware of how easy it is to fool themselves and, by extension, others. As Richard Feynman said, quote, "We've learned from experience that truth will come out. Other experimenters will repeat your experiment and find out whether you are right or wrong. Nature's phenomena will agree or they'll disagree with your theory. And, although you may gain some temporary fame and excitement, you will not gain a good reputation as a scientist if you haven't tried to be very careful in this kind of work. And as this type of integrity, this kind of care not to fool yourself, that is missing to a large extent in much of the research in cargo cult science," end quote. And, I might add, alternative medicine. My archetype, which I've talked about before, for science fooling themselves and others, is the story of N-rays, which I've talked about before. For whatever reason, I do not pretend to understand why, medical people seem to be unable to incorporate the simple concept that unless they are very, very careful, they will be fooled. And that result is complementary and alternative medicine. It is the place that remains after the world has moved on. That phrase, the world moved on, constantly popped into my head as I looked at the Huffington Post sections on integrative medicine. The world of medicine, at least, has moved on and left the Huffington Post and its writers behind. So much of the HuffPo integrative medicine site is at odds with reality as I understand it, and I will only mention a few of the more egregious examples of medical nonsense. HuffPo is really giving natural news a run for their money in the production of fantasy. Most striking was the homeopathic article. Now, in homeopathy, the substances are serially diluted. In the homeopathic articles, they're seriously diluted. Anyway, this was a homeopathic article by Dana Ullman entitled Homeopathy for Radiation Poisoning. Water for Radiation Toxicity. Seriously, and not even heavy water, which might catch an extra neutron. And the reasoning for the use of homeopathy is even more goofy, if possible, than that of osociliococcinum. Quote, because one of the basic premises of homeopathic medicine is that small doses of a treatment can help to heal those symptoms that large doses are known to cause, Ludlam suggested to Grube that radiation may be a treatment for conditions such as tumors because it causes them. This incident is but one of more examples from history in which an insight from a homeopathic perspective has provided an important breakthrough in medical treatment, end quote. Yeah, right. I suppose since smoking causes cancer, you should treat lung cancer with cigarettes, and since alcohol causes cirrhosis, you should treat cirrhosis with vodka. And guns, well, they cause acute lead poisoning, so maybe you should shoot gunshot victims. That, I suppose, would be reasonable conclusions from homeopathic theory, derived from metaphor, and faulty metaphor at that. What nostrums are recommended for radiation therapy? Here comes some Latin I'm sure to screw up the pronunciation of. Cadmium iodatum, cyanthus, and cadmium sulfuretatum. I'm sure I mispronounced those. But when I enter them into PubMed, there are no references to support treating radiation toxicity, even though the author says they are well-known remedies for that condition. Well, not well-known to medical science, I suppose. That is the wisdom of homeopathy. Where saying it makes it so. The author then suggests calendula, which is marigold, is a well-known herbal and homeopathic medicine. Highly respected research has found excellent results using calendula ointment on people who experienced radiation-induced dermatitis, end quote. Now, why is calendula a homeopathic medicine? I went to the original reference, and it appears from the literature to be a worthwhile agent for the prevention of radiation burns. But I am not so sure I would classify it as a homeopathic preparation. According to the producer's site, it is a fresh plant at 4%. And in the original article, it is, quote, fabricated from a plant of the marigold family, Calendula officinalis. The digest is obtained by an incubation at 75 degrees in petroleum jelly to extract the liposoluble components of the plant, end quote. The authors do not use the word homeopathic anywhere in the reference. Real product, containing real parts of the plant at measurable concentrations, hardly homeopathic in nature or in production. Calendula ointment has not been subjected to proving, nor has it been potentiated, as if either are helpful. It is not a homeopathic preparation just because it is a preparation made by a producer of homeopathic nostrums, although that appears to be the reason. It is a new definition of a homeopathic preparation. If it is made by a homeopathic producer, it is therefore a homeopathic preparation. By this standard, the effluent of the Borean toilets would also be considered homeopathic preparations. When it comes to homeopathy, not only has the world moved on, rational thought and consistency have moved on as well. And then there is acupuncture. There is a link to an article entitled, As Medical Costs Rise, More Americans Turn to Acupuncture. This is an article from AOL, linked to from the Huffington Post, which is now owned by AOL. If you want to get the heebie-jeebies, take a look at the opening picture on that page. The text says, quote, practitioners must use needles produced and manufactured according to U.S. Food and Drug Administration standards, which require needles to be sterile, non-toxic, and labeled for single use by qualified practitioners only, quote, end quote. The needles may be sterile, but what good is a sterile needle used by a bare hand? Look at the photographs. Almost every one shows a bare finger sitting right next to the needle where it's penetrating the skin. That does not inspire confidence in an infectious disease doctor. It is no wonder that acupuncture is associated with outbreaks of hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and MRSA infections. Most of the pictures of acupuncture on this website demonstrate that acupuncturists lack understanding of basic techniques to prevent the spread of infectious diseases. Now, it is hard to infect people with an injection. Heroin users inject themselves with a rich melange of bacteria every day without getting infections. It's also hard to infect patients in the hospital with blood draws and IVs. But one of the ways we prevent infections in the hospital is careful technique. And by washing your hands, prepping the site, wearing sterile gloves, you can markedly decrease infection rates. These are all procedures that don't seem to be followed by acupuncturists. And if an infection can happen, and it will happen. Imagine those acupuncturist fingers just recently in a nose, hopefully their own, picking a tooth, or scratching a butt, again, hopefully their own. That will spread an infection with the acupuncturist needle in one unlucky patient. Not only has the world moved on for acupuncture, it took with it an appreciation of germ theory. The Huffington Post seems to be immune from advances in understanding of the so-called integrative medicines, or even basic anatomy and physiology. They link to a video entitled The Meridian System in Oriental Medicine. They might have well have linked to the anatomy of orcs or the physiology of dementors, for all the application to reality it represents. That video is gibberish when compared to the nature as we understand it. When it comes to medicine, for the Huffington Post, the world has moved on. When Huffington Post publishes absolute nonsense, I have to wonder how good their analysis is on issues like politics and war and the environment and other important areas of which I don't know very much. I was always taught to judge a man by the company he keeps. I have the same problem with my local newspaper, the Oregonian, which publishes the occasional nonsense piece in their living section. And they often get things wrong with infectious diseases, the one area I have expertise. And if they are wrong in areas where I know the topic, how can I trust their writings on other subjects? When I finish the series, the Stephen King series, that is, I'll let you know, metaphorically, what the alt-med Dark Tower is. But for now, for a lot of the writings on alternative medicine that you can find on the Huffington Post, the world has moved on. And so ends a brief Quackcast number 62. Just remember that you can find my growing multimedia empire over at moremark.squarespace.com, where you can find links to the various and sundry projects I am involved with. And sort of FYI, I was at the local grocery store recently where they have this machine that does an etching onto a piece of metal so you can make your own dog tag or med alert badge. I had one made up that says allergic to alternative medicine, and I now have it on my key ring. So hopefully if I end up at some place like University of Maryland, they won't give me Reiki or acupuncture or other such nonsense. And hopefully next time we talk, the Portland Trail Blazers will be the NBA champions. To dream the impossible dream.